Hey everybody, it's Scott Hansen again here from the Riffle.blogspot.com. I'm here to do another in my fly focus series today. I'm going to do a tying tutorial for a female Adams. This is pretty much just like any other old Adams parachute, only I'm going to put a egg sac on the end of it, make it look like a little female mayfly. You can tie these with all sorts of different colored egg sacs. Usually you would see them with like a pale yellow or chartreuse colored egg sac. This one here in the vise right now has an orange egg sac that I've tied. I've got another one here that is a pink egg sac. You can tie them in pretty much any color scheme you want. You could do pink, yellow, green, orange. You could try some with purple egg sacs. I don't know. I don't know what color mayfly eggs usually are. The ones I've seen are usually an orange, but the female Adams traditionally has yellow or light green egg sacs. So you can decide what you want to do. I have a size 16 dry fly hook here. I'm going to put in the vise. There we go. Any standard size 6, any standard dry fly hook will work. You can tie these in whatever size you want, from 8s or 10s down to 22s, 24s, whatever you feel like doing. So I've got my hook in the vise. I'm going to just tie this with some red A-dot unithread that I've got in my bobbin here. And whenever I tie a parachute, I like to start the thread at about the 1/4 point, about a quarter of the way back from the eye, and just give myself a visual starting point. And I'm going to cover up that whole hook shank all the way back to the bend with my thread, but then bring my thread back to the 1/4 point. Tail on this fly is going to be some brown mayfly tails or microphybettes, whatever brand name you can find. And Adams traditionally have brown and grizzly hackle for tail, but I like to use microphybettes or mayfly tails for pretty much all my dry flies that have tails. So I'm just going to use brown. I want to measure these, just eyeball them up here against the hook shank, and I want them to be about the length of the hook shank, including the eye. So I'll just kind of eyeball them there, move them into position, and tie them in starting here at the 1/4 point. And I'm going to hold on to those tail fibers so that they don't roll around the hook on me as I wrap my thread back towards the bend. And if I tie them in all the way up and down the hook shank like this, makes a nice even underbody, and they're in there nice and tight. They're not going to come out. I usually lift up my tail fibers when I'm tying mayfly imitations and just put one wrap of thread underneath there. Just kind of holds, make sure the tails stay up nice and high, splays them out just a little bit. And I just don't want them to get droopy, as they tend to get when if they get kind of tied down the hook shank around the bend a little bit. So I just trimmed off the excess tailing fibers there, and my thread is still at the 1/4 point. Now this is my technique for tying in parachute wings and hackle. So I've got, you can use Antron yarn or poly yarn or whatever your favorite post material is. You could use turkey flats or whatever you want. I usually use Antron. I don't have any white Antron on hand at the moment, so I'm using some poly yarn, which works just fine. This is about half of a strand of poly yarn. I've pulled it apart so that I've got about half of it. And as you notice, I looped it up underneath the hook shank there, held it straight up, and took my thread from behind to in front and wrapped in about 4 or 5 wraps on the front part. Now I'm going to take my thread from the front and just go in back and tie that in with 4 or 5 wraps. Now this next step assures that my wing doesn't get too floppy or fall over. So I'm just going to bring my thread up and around just the wing, just the post, and then drop it on my side of the thread. And I'm going to do that again. Now it's on my side of the hook. I'm just going to bring that around and drop it on the far side of the hook. But I'm only going around the wing itself. I'm going to do that several times here. Get a little base of thread just around the wing material. Once I get a little base of thread, now I'm going to work my way up that wing, and I'm going to cover up that post about 1/8 of an inch up from the hook shank. Now that I've got that in there, I'm going to work my way back down to the hook, and I'm just going to do a few figure eights around the hook shank and around the base of the wing, and just kind of cover up that poly yarn there on the far side, and just let my thread hang in front of that wing. Now on an Adams, as you probably know, has 2 different colored hackle feathers on an Adams. So I've got a nice long Whiting brand grizzly hackle here, size to this hook. This is a size 16, as I mentioned. And whenever I tie in hackle, I like to take the butt end of the feather and just trim the fibers away close to the stem, but not all the way down to the stem, about 1/4 of an inch up the stem. And that just ensures that there's something for my thread to grab onto as I tie it in. Now this is my my style of tying parachute hackles in. I'm going to take that butt end of the feather there, as you can see there, and I'm going to come in from the far side of the hook, from the camera side of the hook, and just aim that butt end of the feather right at my chest, and I'm going to just place it right behind the wing. So I'm going to place it right behind the wing here, and just let it kind of sit on the hook shank. I'm going to take my thread, kind of hard to see here with the camera angle. I'm just going to throw my thread over the hackle. As you can see right now, the hackle is just tied right onto the hook shank, right behind the wing, with a couple of wraps of thread. I'm just going to wrap a couple more, and then I'm going to marry this feather right to my wing. So I'm just going to wrap up those thread wraps on my post and tie the hackle in right there. And I'm going to bring my thread back down and leave it hang in front of the wing again. And I'm going to get my next feather ready. This is a brown Whiting saddle hackle. It's sized for the size 16 hook. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to take the butt end, which I have trimmed the fibers off of there to leave little nubbins, as you can see, for something that for my thread to hang on to. And again, I'm just going to go in from the far side of the hook with that butt end and place it right behind the wing. Throw my thread over the stem a couple of times behind that wing post, so that's tied in, as you can see, just on the hook shank right now, right behind the wing post. But now I'm going to bring my thread up again and marry that brown hackle onto the post as well. So that's, both my hackles are tied right up the wing. You can see there. And I'll bring my thread back down to the hook shank, and now I will just tie those in all the way as I wrap my thread all the way back to the tail. And the hackles just kind of flop around as I wrap my stuff. So now all I have to do is put a body on this fly, and then I can wrap the hackles. So I've got my thread back at the back, right in front of the tails. Like I mentioned, female Adams have little egg sacs on them, and so I'm going to take some. This is some pale water yellow. I'm sorry, Fly Right brand dubbing, which you can't get anymore. But any dry fly dubbing in a yellow color scheme would work. Or like I said, you could use orange or pink or green, whatever color you want. And I don't need much because I just need enough dubbing here to make a little egg sac. So I've got about 3/4 of an inch of dubbing on my thread, a nice thin rope, and I'm just going to wrap that around and just kind of make a little ball at the back end of the fly. And once I get that on, just let my thread hang right in front of that. Now I've got some gray superfine dry fly dubbing here. Just going to put enough of this on to cover the rest of the hook shank, both in front of and behind the wing. So I've got about 1.5 inches here of gray dubbing on my thread. I'll start at the back and just make a nice tapered body up towards that wing. I'm going to need a little bit more dubbing on there, I can already tell. I want that to be nice and thin as I come up here to the wing, and my dubbing right now is right behind the wing. I'm just going to bring that in front of the wing, and since I've got a nice thin rope of dubbing, I can figure eight that around the wing post a little bit. Make sure I cover up all those thread wraps on the far side of the hook. I'll put just a little bit more on there. And there we go. And I'm going to finish up with my thread right behind the eye. So I've got, what's going on with this tail fiber back here is bugging me. I'm going to trim that out. So I've got my tail on, got my yellow egg sac, I've got my gray body dubbed. All I have to do now is wrap my hackle. So when I have two hackles on a parachute, like on this Adams, I'm going to take both of them and wrap them together. So I just hold them together, both the grizzly and the brown. I'm going to hold them nice and tight. I pull them straight down and away from me so that they're on the far side. They're pointing away from me on the hook. I'm going to wrap them backwards, counterclockwise. I can wrap both of them around towards the top of those thread wraps. As I come around on the next wrap, I'm going to just kind of duck below that first wrap and make my next wrap right below that. And with two feathers, you probably only want to do about 3 wraps. That should get you enough hackle as you work your way down towards the hook shank. And that looks pretty good right there. As I get around on my third wrap, I'm just going to hold them, pull them straight down on the far side of the hook with my fingers. I'm going to bring my thread up. You see what I'm doing here? Let's see. There we go. So I've got the thread, I've got the feathers on the far side of the hook. Got my thread on my side of the hook. I'm going to bring that straight up in front of the hackle, in front of the hackle on the post. Bring that around, and as I come around on the far side of the hook, I'm going to bring that backwards, and as I come up on my side, I come behind the hackles, and those are essentially tied in now as I go around the second time. We do that 3 or 4 times. Once I've gone around about 4 times, I'm going to just set my thread on the back of the hook, or on the back of the vise there, so that it's up and out of the way when I go in and trim my hackles out. Go in there real close underneath the eye with my curved scissors and trim out the stems and any loosey-goosey hackles that might be in the way under there. There you go. Once those are trimmed, I bring my thread back down and see if I can just kind of pull the hackles up and out of the way with my left thumb and forefinger. Make a nice little thread head here. And I take my Mandarelli whip finisher and just go underneath the hackles so you don't trap any of them down. There you go, pull that tight. You trim that off now. And essentially our female Adams is done. A couple of short hackles there on the far side of the hook. I'm just going to trim those out. All I have to do now is trim the wing to length. I want that to be about the length of the hook shank or so, maybe a little shorter. And that'll be a nice visual on when it's on the water surface. You can see that white wing real nicely. And our female Adams parachute is done. As I said, you can tie these in pretty much any size you want to match whatever mayflies you have in your area, and I think you'll enjoy them. I don't know if the fish key in on the egg sacs all that much, but they fish just as well as a regular Adam, so it can be fun to use every once in a while. Hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.